There was a video of Sneako doing a brief meet and greet with some of his very young fans, middle school aged boys, at a Miami Marlins game recently. And in this clip, while we're about to watch it, they make some very distasteful comments about the LGBT community. And it's clearly stuff they're saying because this is what they think Sneako believes, and they want to get attention and validation from Sneako as their idol. It's kind of scary that Sneako is an idol for young boys these days, for various reasons. But he looks at the camera and he's like, "What have I done?"
Yeah. Here, we'll play the clip.
It is a little funny that Mr. Beast keeps giving us like new controversial characters in this universe.
he's just
like, we got Chris, and then we got Sneako. We got the opposite ends of the spectrum.
I have no idea how I went this long not knowing Sneako was on Mr. Beast's channel.
Yeah, I found out.
I thought he just kind of popped up out of nowhere.
I thought he was just like an Aiden Ross, Andrew Tate kind of guy.
Yeah.
Well, he is.
Well, I thought that's how he started.
He shifted that way, and I think he's a little bit like trying to repair his reputation right now.
Well, that tweet's not doing a very good job of it.
No.
Here we go. Here's the clip.
Fuck the woman! Fuck the woman!
What? No, wait.
Sneako.
We love women. We love women.
But not like transgenders.
Yes, sir.
We love everybody. No.
All gays should die.
Yeah, merch, preach. Not good, ladies and gentlemen.
Not ideal.
Not ideal. Not good.
Play the rest.
What have I done?
Fucking talk.
Yeah. Talk to him.
Yo, what's up? He looks a little bit like what am I doing to society?
Yeah.
Just a little bit, you know?
In the moment, he kind of had a reckoning with himself. Like, what kind of influence am I having on these children?
Yeah.
And aside from anything they're saying about, like, women or gay people or whatever, that language.
Yeah.
It's very bad language for kids to be using around adults. Like, I don't know. I feel like that wasn't as normal decades back.
Do you think that there's, like, kind of like this... When you're like an internet personality, and sometimes like the size of your reach kind of doesn't always like compute.
It doesn't register with you when you're just the one on camera.
Exactly, right? So if you're that person, right, and you're like, wow, then you realize the effect that your words actually have in the world. You're like, holy crap! Like
we have like probably 11-year-old pop culture crisis fans. Walking around like, hey, crisis actors.
That's our audience is very firmly in adulthood.
So Sneako responded to this clip getting posted and said, "They're children and obviously joking. This is how I was at 12. But if it sounds egregious to you, blame the rainbow flags in their classrooms. Blame the media for emasculating men. It's your fault for forcing an obvious agenda, not these kids. Boys will be boys." That infamous phrase, boys will be boys.
I was just watching a thing the other day. The Dadvocate had a like a poll up on Instagram that was like, what do you think of, like, do you approve of the phrase boys will be boys, and then left it open for like people to answer why. And most of it is the most most people are rational, and they're like, look, if we're talking about 12-year-olds roughhousing, that's fine, but if we're talking about excusing awful behavior and calling it locker room behavior, that's not the same
but
thing.
I don't think that boys will be boys ever was a phrase used to excuse things like that.
In Hollywood, it's something you'd see in television shows where it's just the worst.
In TV shows, but in reality, I really don't get. I don't think that it was used to excuse that kind of behavior.
I mean, never in my house, but I can't speak for everyone.
Especially not about adults. And this is normal for 12-year-olds, I think. Like,
exactly. That's what I was going to say.
Especially, I believe that Sneako was like this at 12. I think you have to worry about why am I the same person I was at 12 when I'm however old Sneako is.
Yeah, I'm not going to say that I was like that at 12 because I wasn't, but I knew people who were, just were like a little immature and edgy and thought that they were being cool. And then as they grew up, they grew into like totally normal, well-adjusted people.
Exactly.
It's like
the Call of Duty lobbies
Yeah.
would have you believe that these people grew up to be this way forever. And that's not
exactly.
true.
12-year-olds are like that, and they do say things like this. But the whole point is that you're supposed to correct that behavior.
Yeah.
Like you expect it, you understand that that's normal for them, but you also have a responsibility as a role model to be like, hey, I understand, why you think that's funny, but it's not. Here's why. Here's how to be a well-adjusted human being. You're supposed to not necessarily parent, but lead the way, and that's not
Maybe
what he's doing
it doesn't feel like
here.
the time and place, but like the parents they don't seem to be present in this situation. Or keeping track of what their kids are watching online.
Well, the one
It's a
kid's
huge
lost
problem.
already. He's wearing a U Miami shirt.
Kids are always going to say crazy stuff. That's just.
Yeah.
I mean, there was whole.
But it's like you have to think like, why do they think saying these specific phrases is the way to get approval from their idol?
Yeah.
Right? And why is Sneako their idol? It's probably because they have unfettered internet access and their parents don't listen to or pay attention to what they're watching.
Yeah. And a lot of these kids, like they're right, they're being shoved agendas down their throat the whole time from every angle, the rest of their lives, and the only way that they are able to escape that is they find people that have the complete opposite personality, and that a lot of times doesn't necessarily find you the greatest individuals.
Right. I think 12-year-olds in the 2000s, they called things gay and they said slurs and they were edgy and stuff like that, but I don't think they had the same antagonist that 12-year-olds today have, especially 12-year-old boys who are being actively emasculated, and also in the classroom, the girls are praised for their ability to sit still and be quiet, and boys don't have that same ability. They're being medicated.
So just put them on Adderall.
Yeah, they're being medicated and indoctrinated. That's absolutely the case, and it wasn't as bad in the 2000s or even the 2010s. So
you think that's infinitely worse now? I mean, I feel like it was already bad.
It's
I think
way
it was already
worse.
bad before.
I think it's way worse in classrooms now.
Yeah.
In public schools and in the media, all over the place. Yes.
And the kids aren't given strong male role models. Hollywood tells them that all men are big and dumb and they're oafs. They can't do anything right, and they're kind of expected to just do that. They're supposed to resign themselves to a life where they're just a big dumb oaf who is subservient to whoever he ends up marrying. Right? That's what it feels like.
Yeah.
That they're not really given great role models, and it's the same is true on television and movies. Like I always point out, it's like I was shocked at certain movies when the guy just ends up being competent in the movie, because it just doesn't seem like that happens very much anymore.
And maybe that's not stuff that these 12-year-olds are actively thinking about or are even conscious of, but it's in their subconscious. Like they can feel that sentiment in the air.
Yeah.
They wouldn't be able to articulate it like the way that you just did, but they know that specifically their maleness is reviled in our current culture.
Yeah. So a lot of what you see is they resign to video games. They resign to a different life than what we should be giving for them. Whereas with women, we're encouraging them to go out, do your best, become a CEO. Women, what is it? Women are now outpacing men at college, both in graduation and admission, right?
I think they're making more money than men in a similar age group.
Which is funny because the gender wage gap is still going to be a topic. So these kids...
For decades to come.
In about 10, 15 years, there will be no statistics to support it, because it will invert. And it will be that men are making less on average.
Yeah.
And they'll be like, good. That's the sad part.
Good. They should live in boxes.
Yeah. Well, that's what they'll end up
so
saying.
Sneako also...
I am so happy to be self-employed.
Sneako did a stream on Rumble where he addressed this video as well and gave a seemingly sarcastic apology. He said, "I just wanted to take a moment to apologize for everything and take accountability. Sometimes you don't realize the type of impact you have." He started pretending to cry. "You don't realize the reach. You don't know how many people you're really getting to. I think the liberals were right. I think YouTube was right to ban me."
Yeah.
I don't think YouTube was right to ban him, though.
No.
That
Maybe for sniffing Andrew Tate's seat. That
was Aiden Ross.
Or that was
not
yes,
Sneako.
that was Aiden Ross. That's
They all kind of blend together.
That's a bannable offense.
I am so angry to share a name with that kid.
His is spelled.
It's not the
His
same-
is spelled
yeah.
the wrong. It's spelled.
the wrong
it's such a
spelling.
stupid
It's
way
like,
of
it's like
spelling.
spelling
the name.
Brett with one T.
It's spelled Adden.
Aden.
That's not how English works. That does not spell Aiden.
It's like spelling Brett with one T. It's just wrong.
Two acceptable spellings. The original Irish one that has an O in it for some reason, and the one I have.
How's that one spelled?
I think it's Aodhan, something like that.
It's horrible.
Yeah.
It's like Siobhan,
Yeah.
Sioban.
Yeah.
It's not even a thing.
It's a different language, Brett.
What? How would you how would you correct this if you were in charge of the world? How would you correct this problem?
Or if I were one of their mothers.
Yes, that's it. Yeah.
Ugh. It's such a daunting thought. Like,
Yeah.
Come on, Mommy Mary.
I hated
I'm so
that.
sorry.
I hated that.
I thought it was gonna. I
don't
thought it
know
was
if
gonna
we
be
can
funny,
move
and it
past
came on
this.
worse. It came out worse.
I don't know if we can move past
It was
that.
an immediate moment of, you know what?
I mean,
No.
I think internet. I mean, I think monitoring your kids' internet behavior.
Yeah,
the
that's
internet
you
is
get
a
ahead of
huge-
that before they're 12.
Yeah.
You know?
Yep.
And it's just basic, it's parental neglect at this point to give your kids smartphones at such a young age and to give them unrestricted internet access. It is neglect.
Yeah.
Or to not put like parental controls and filters on what they're using.
And it's going to be up to the moms and the dads to be able to tell their boys, like, look, you are not bad by default, like society is telling you. And again, those kids won't be able to identify an exact example of that. It's because all aspects of society are quietly telling them that. But mom and dad will have to find a way to say, like, look, this is not true. You may feel that way sometimes, even though you can't put your finger on why, but you are not bad just because you're a guy.
Even girls in an inverted sense, they're given the same message that there's something fundamentally wrong with them for being feminine.
Yes.
And
women
that
should be women.
Yeah.
Really, it's that men should act more like women and women should act more like men.
Until we're all just kind of gray blobs.
Yeah, amorphous and just empty.
Yeah.
And
we work for companies.
and indistinguishable from someone else, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's scary and that's sad, especially if you want to use traditional traits of gender as like a baseline for raising your kid, right? Which would have been completely normal 20 years ago, but now is no longer like that.
One of the trendy feminist slogans that was on t-shirts and tote bags in the mid 2010s was raise boys and girls the same way.
Which makes no sense.
Raise boys and girls the same way. The fundamental message behind that slogan is that boys and girls are fundamentally the same. They have no distinctions. There's no real distinction between male and female. There's no such thing as a difference between masculinity and femininity. Therefore, there's no reason to raise boys and girls differently.
Yeah.
But no, like, raise boys like boys and raise girls like girls. It doesn't mean impose artificial gender roles on them, like if you're a girl you have to wear pink and you have to play with dolls, or if you're a boy you have to like trucks. That's not what that means. We've just really like lost a sense of like the real spiritual difference between men and women.
So what I also find interesting is that with my group of friends growing up, like my neighborhood group, the people that I spent every day with in the summer, all that, we did not really observe gender differences in what we did together. Like the girls would be involved in wrestling and playing manhunt, and we did everything together as a group. Nobody was excluded on the basis of gender. We just did everything together. And as we grew older, all the girls ended up totally normal girls, and all the guys turned out totally normal guys. Like we just naturally made that split into taking the different interests that you take as adults. So like when you don't consciously do the whole we raise everybody the same thing, you just passively let kids do what they want to do. They're going to practice freedom of association and they're going to socialize normally. Your job as a parent is not to socially engineer your child's development.
Yes.
It's to allow your child the freedom to grow while keeping them safe. It's not to create the perfect child because you're going to mess up if you try.
Yeah. I think when you're saying like you need to raise boys, telling them, despite what the media, you might hear in the media, there's not something wrong with you because you're male. Like you do need to overcorrect just because the culture is so insane right now.
Yeah.
But really it's important to teach girls that the ways they're different from boys are not deficits in them. And likewise, that the ways boys are not like girls, that's not a deficit in them either.
It's weird. Like, I think back to how Hollywood, like, one of the things that I found unifying about Hollywood back in the day is they tended to focus more, and this is a conscious shift that's gone on in society in the last 10 to 15 years, longer than that now. But it used to focus on, like, what did you have in common with your fellow man, right? It's like, it's kind of like, remember when COVID had We're All in This Together and everyone made fun of it because it actually is ridiculous in that concept. But at the end of the day, like, what they would do is they would talk about, like, look, like when we're talking like people at award shows, or if we're talking about like when they did We Are the World, it's like we're all human, right? But you acknowledge that despite the fact that you had differences, we have common ground that all of us can find. Now they seem to go the opposite way, where they focus extremely heavily on the things that divide, that separate us from one another, and then they ignore the humanity of everyone else. And that's by design. And that type of behavior, when it's, thrown at kids day in and day out, isn't healthy. Thanks for watching. Listen to full episodes of Pop Culture Crisis on Spotify.
Keep up with us on social media and make sure you subscribe and ring that bell so you never miss the show. Bye, guys.